What's up, Mets fans? Welcome back to the channels with my boy CP here to do a little series recap. And we get to talk positive about our Mets. And we got a sweep. And the man below me was at those games. So let's say what up to him and let's talk about those games. Chris, how you doing?
How about those Mets coming into
Hey,
DC hot? Got to see these fellas live in action for the first two games. Really wanted to see the team in the third game, but I know that delay was going to be too lengthy for me. Had some stuff planned up, but man, we got a lot to talk about today because honestly, I'm not going to lie to you, just opening up this stream, besides all the usual promo we do about liking the video, liking the stream, et cetera, appreciate you all being here, by the way. This was one of the most complete series of baseball this entire season, through and through, that I've seen this team play. No doubt in my mind, and not only about the actual results of the game, but also looking past into the dugout, the guys on the field, and just how locked in they were. This was a beautiful thing to see. And I really do think that this has a potential. Now, I'm not going to go as far as to say that this will change the trajectory of the Mets season. This has a potential to be the start of something great. And we'll talk about the X's and O's of it. But I appreciate you all being here. As always, everybody in the chat, make sure you all are hitting that thumbs up being streamed to both channels. And make sure you all are subscribing to the channel if you are new here. A lot of Mets content creators, Rob, sent out a tweet tagging you, tagging everybody that's going live today. Mets Weekly, Subway to Shea and Sons, Blunt Thoughts with Hector. Till Mets Do His Part was live yesterday. Sunny Days Media was live yesterday. So all of these great content creators going live, doing what they do best. It's a great time in the Mets community right now. And hopefully the Mets can just stack wins. That's all we can pray for at this point.
yeah, absolutely. And look, the abundance of Mets content creators, especially on a day off, knowing we have back-to-back days off before the London series, clearly shows, I wouldn't call it excitement, but a rejuvenation of the fan base. Where we, like, I believe in the Brad said it, the rejuvenation of the players. It seemed like they were rejuvenated, and we'll talk about maybe why that is the case, and we'll talk about it. And I think a lot of people know one name that has not been in the lineup that I think has a lot to do with it. So yes, I think it's a rejuvenation of the fan base. I think we were so down in the dumps. It was only what 5 days ago, a couple of days ago, we had the roundtable and we were going off. Like it was literally a terrible homestand. We're going to play the Nationals, right? Everybody was like, "Oh, the Nationals are better than the Mets. The Nationals are up and coming." And the Mets actually played, like you said, Chris, a well-rounded series. Yes, some of them were nerve racking and a little bit of a little worrisome. We got to deal with the bullpen a little bit more, but we got a couple of good young arms in that bullpen that could really help us. And a guy who Stearns traded for in Hauser, who was a starter, now in the bullpen. These guys could help this bullpen at least get somewhere to back to normalcy. And with the offense hitting and the starting pitching doing what they need to do, I think this team can actually be a lot better than what their record shows at 27-35 that you see on the bottom, Chris. And you know what? Starting with how this lineup performed, you see it here: 8 runs, 6 runs, 9 runs. That is a total lineup effort. This wasn't one or two people. This was straight through the lineup. I mean, Luis Torrens was. I mean, he was more productive offensively than James McCann ever was, and he's been here a week and a half. So I want to get your thoughts about the lineup and what have you noticed in this Washington series that kind of thinks that this lineup could actually do this going forward? I'm not talking about 8, 9 runs a game, but you know what? That averaging around 4 to 6 runs per ball game. And I think that's where they can be, especially with the big boys at the top of the lineup. But what did you notice specifically about this lineup in this Washington series that you really was like, oh, wow, this lineup can be good?
Situational hitting, the thing
Yep.
that's been lacking when the Mets were down in the dumps just not too long ago. Situational hitting. It started with Harrison Bader in game one, having a couple sac flies. Mark Vientos also had a sac fly this series, right? Starling Marte, opposite field, down the line triple. Pete Alonso securing some insurance runs. Like, This is a total team effort. Lindor, not only a 0-out RBI, not a 1-out RBI, but a 2-out RBI, something this team hasn't been doing. And do you notice that I'm naming more than just one or two players? Do you notice that I'm not stopping at a JD Martinez or Francisco Lindor? Because guess what? Luis Torrens has been on fire as well. Short sample size, I understand. I get it. 2 home runs, but he's doing it both defensively and offensively. Situational hitting. Like someone said in the chat here, they're taking extra bases and they're doing the situational things like moving runners over, etc. And that's all you can hope for. The power has been showing up. Brandon Nimmo taking one the opposite field, I believe in game 2 for a double. It's good situational baseball top to bottom. In the second game, Rob, every single player that started for the New York Mets had a hit. Every single one of them. These bats came out hot. And you know what I think about the most when I see a series like this, when you see 8 runs, 6 runs, 9 runs? I think about selective aggression. Selective aggression at the plate. The New York Mets took advantage of opportunities on pitches inside the zone early and often. They didn't let strike one go by. They didn't chase on a breaking ball way out of the zone to get themselves in 0-2 holes. Selective aggression. It looked like the Mets were seeing the ball better. And we're just talking about offense right now. So that is something that really woke me up in this series. Like, I can rally behind this. I can get behind this. If this is the version of a New York Mets offense that I'm going to get consistently, regardless of what the result is, I'm going to be here to watch because I want to watch those swings and I want to see this ball flying around to all parts of the field. Mark Vientos. Oh my goodness, man. This dude is killing the ball. I'm sorry. I need to just hats off to Mark Vientos. Clap it up for Mark Vientos. I don't know what needs to be said about Mark Vientos, but we need to give him his flowers. But also, you see a guy like Brandon Nimmo, a guy that we've been just wondering if he's going to get it together in that 3-hole. As soon as that lineup change commenced and took part, we saw Francisco Lindor slowly get out of his slump, more into his comfort zone. The on-base percentage of Francisco Lindor is above 300 for the first time, I believe, all season.
Yep.
He's now batting 238 or 235. Pete Alonso's up to 238. If you care about the batting average, I'm always a big OPS and slug watch in terms of the batting or the batting sort of metrics, because that indicates to me extra base hits, which wins you ball games in this type of league. But man, they've been doing it all. How about Starling Marte having one of the best series I've seen from any New York Met this series? Listen, everyone stepped up to the plate. And are we expecting everybody on the team to replicate this each series? No, that's unrealistic. There's going to be guys that carry you through a series more often than not. And that is where your core comes into play. And that is where we've talked about this team and where we were at with this team. Like, when everybody wasn't producing, especially the bottom half, maybe when they went a little quiet, it was up to the core to produce, and they didn't. And that's why the Mets are losing games.
Yep.
But I really think there's a lot of positives in this series to take away. And I'm not saying that I'm completely buying back in. All I'm saying is that this is the first time in a while that I've been able to come up here on a stream and give more flowers than I take away. So I'm going to use this time and take advantage of it while keeping expectations low. I'm going into this London series. We'll talk about it here in a second with expectations low. And I know I'm going on a rant. I'll shut up soon. I apologize. But I really am taking a glass half full, half empty approach with this team right now. You can be objective and look forward to good baseball and expect good baseball from this team, because that's the bare minimum. We should expect clean, fundamental baseball from this team night in and night out.
Yep.
And that's exactly what they provided this series. So we'll see what happens moving forward. Like I said, I don't know if this is going to continue. You don't know if this is going to continue. They could have just came out the woodworks with this type of performance, and they can go right back to sloppy baseball, non-situational hitting, not producing with runners in scoring position. They can go back during this London series after maybe too few many beers? We don't know. But right now, on June 6th, 2024, we can come on here and talk about a series that was really productive. That's what matters.
Yeah, and you know what, Chris, you said it. They took control of the at bats, right? The early counts, the aggressiveness that on the base pass, the aggressiveness at the plate, and you haven't seen that from a Mets team for the most of the season. Let's be quite honest. Even when they went on that stretch of 12 and 15, they really didn't. Even during that time, they weren't aggressive enough, and it wasn't the core guys. This team looks a hell of a lot different when your big boys are joining the party, right? The supporting cast in this lineup has been doing their job all season long, right? The Baders of the world, the Tyrone Taylors of the world, even whatever catcher you want to throw out there, Nito or even Luis Torrens, like it's been the supporting cast that's been doing the job. And we said this over and over again. We don't need every guy to be hot as a firecracker. We need guys to be better than what they were early part of the season. And I brought this up in a group chat, right? I said they didn't. I actually tweeted this out. It wasn't that they're playing like crazy good. They're better, just a little bit more above average than what they were doing in April and May for the most part. And they don't even have to play to the back of their baseball cards. They can be a little less than that. And this team is a lot better. And they've shown it because of the quality at bats, the quality hitting, the clutch performances, the right at bats at the right time, situational hitting. You don't always have to hit a 3-run homer, right? You got a guy less than 2 outs. If you need to move the runner over, you move the runner over. You get that, 2-out hit, or you get that sac fly. Like there was a lot of that in this game as well. It wasn't just the home run ball, even though there was a back to back, and there was a couple of big home runs in this series. I think it's important to realize that, and I'm going to say it now, Jeff McNeil is not in the lineup, and if Jeff McNeil has been the problem the whole time and it just drove this lineup down with his antics, with his just bad at bats. I mean, I can't say just bad at bats because Lindor and Alonso had bad at bats as well. So I think it's his demeanor. I think he feels like he's like going up to the plate feeling let down, and it drags the whole team down. I don't know if that's true or not, and it's just circumstance. But the Mets are undefeated with Jose Iglesias at second base. Like that's not something to just throw to the side here when this team has been struggling. And before this, what were they? 11 games under 500, 10 games under 500.
11, yeah.
I think Jeff McNeil might be the issue, and I don't think they benched him for like a Vogelback mental health situation. I think they don't trust Jeff McNeil anymore, and it's clear. Like I think this is from the top. I think David Stearns. Look, you can't send him to the minors. You can't trade him right now. So what do? He's got to be on the roster. You sit his ass on the bench and don't even make him see daylight. That's what they're doing right now. And they're winning right now. So I don't expect Jeff McNeil to be in the lineup in the London series at all. Like
5-0, Rob. 5-0 without him.
Yeah. And you know what? Too bad. Right. And this is what I loved about David Stearns. We talked about this a little bit on the roundtable. When you don't do your job, and specifically when people talk about David Stearns and small market Stearns and they don't trust him, they don't think he's going to spend the money, or he's going to use his stupid philosophy that I saw on X the other day. He could have leaned favoritism towards Adrian Hauser and leave them in the rotation and let his ego take over and leave him in the rotation. That's his guy. That was his first trade as the New York Mets president of baseball ops, running the team. He could have easily been like, I'm sticking with my guy. I trust Adrian Hauser. I had him for a long time with the Brewers. I could have, but no. He swallowed his ego, knowing that Adrian Hauser was hurting the team in the rotation. He believed, all right, let's try the bullpen. He was good with the Brewers in the bullpen, and it's been pretty successful. And that alone shows you that David Stearns is not letting emotion get the best of him at all in any decision, no matter if it's from Adrian Hauser to Pete Alonso to Francisco Lindor to Jeff McNeil, right? Jeff McNeil was one of the core guys that got paid. He's on the bench right now for a guy who's a journeyman veteran who's been playing pretty good for the Mets. Actually, the Mets actually turned double plays now. I don't think that's a coincidence either. Jeff McNeil and Lindor had problems turning double plays, and it's been a big problem, specifically in May. And even all through both Lindor and McNeil's partnership over the last couple of seasons, they've had a hard time turning double plays. It's been an issue. I don't know if that's communication. I don't know if that's just them two just not working well together, but they turned a couple of double plays, Iglesias and Lindor. So it's going to be very hard for McNeil to get back into this lineup unless there's an injury, God forbid. But I want to get your take on the Jeff McNeil situation because, look, the stats show it, the record shows it, the demeanor of this lineup shows it. There's more energy in this lineup. Now, you can lose 2 in a row to the Phillies without Jeff McNeil, and then we can go back to saying, well, this core is not it. But what is your take on the Jeff McNeil situation? Do you think it's a benching because they believe he's bringing down this lineup, or is it just a mental health thing like they did last year with Daniel Vogelback?
First of all, I don't think I don't think it's a mental health thing. I think it's definitely strictly due to the performance, but also I have a couple points here. Shout out to Aaron Blueshirt's banner in the chat. 100% Jose Iglesias was his guy from the start. He wanted him up in spring training. I think a few of us did after his killer spring training, and he's been calling for him ever since. So shout out to Aaron. I want to make sure that he gets his credit because I definitely remember him always being in on Mr. Iglesias. Now, couple things here to dissect with this situation is that there was 3 lefties on the mound. So we can't really for sure say and project whether this is going to continue, whether there's a lefty or righty on the mound, although they do have Ranger Suarez going in game 1 in London, a lefty. So I would assume Jose Iglesias is going to be playing there, coupled with the fact that Carlos Mendoza, when asked about the situation, I believe it was either the first game, I forgot which one it was, either first or second game with Jose Iglesias starting, made sure, as a great manager should, right? You don't want to, give away your hand, reveal your hand, whatever. He was making sure to downplay the situation with Jeff McNeil, saying that this is just sort of matchup based, or I don't know exactly what he said, but he said that this wasn't indicative of something larger to come. I can't for anything of me like believe that. I can't. Because you have a guy that's simply outperforming you right now on both sides of the ball on Jose Iglesias. Not only is he hitting the ball better than you, he's also playing better defense, like you said, Rob. And the middle infield seems to flow better without Jeff McNeil. Toss away the tantrums to the side. Toss away whatever bad at bats to the side. Just the overall flow of the defense up the middle and the comfortability with Lindor seems a lot better, right? And that is important. That is very important. So I'm very curious. Now, also, you have to remember that regardless, because I don't want to talk deadline. I said this in my past stream. I did a live stream yesterday. All that selling talk nonsense on June 6th. Like, obviously, we talked about on the roundtable, we talked about on the pre-games, et cetera, especially during the homestand and after it. But you have to realize that regardless of what the Mets do, they can't afford to not give some young guys opportunities, regardless of what position they're in. I'm firmly in that line of thinking that even if they are in the wild card hunt, there's going to be maybe sort of a hybrid sell. If they're not full sellers, they'll have like a hybrid sell where they'll have to like clear off some roster spots and get a guy like Luis Angel Acuna in here and give him a chance to see what he's got. Because you can't really go into 2025 expecting those guys to have 0 major league experience with the big club, because that's a very tall task to ask of them. So there has to be sort of a mixed situation, even if you are trying to compete for a wild card spot. Now, I know the Mets fan base is split, whether they believe the Mets can inevitably achieve a wild card spot or they can't. But there's a lot of things that David Stern still has to work out in terms of planning for the future while also being worried about the second half of this season. But nonetheless, to get back to the overall point, this team looks night and day different. I know I said that they were 5-0 without Jeff McNeil. That doesn't even matter to me. I look about how this team is flowing offensively and defensively. And right now, like you said, what you see as a product on the field without Jeff McNeil being a part of this team, he can do whatever he wants in the dugout, hang out with whoever he wants. He can cheer, he can mope on the bench. Nobody seems to care because everyone else is going out there and doing their job. And that's what's most important. So I don't know, man. I'm not saying that the writing is completely on the wall that Jeff McNeil is one, maybe going to get moved because there's some contractual conflicts there. He's owed about just over $10 million. Thank you to Patty on my last live stream for doing that math. The Mets, as bad as Jeff McNeil is, probably are going to have to eat some money on the rest of that contract with the amount of years that he has remaining and the total valuation that he's owed per year. Because listen, if the Mets don't want him, I know everybody has said this before, and it's just like logical thinking. If the Mets don't want him, and every other team has seen the Mets pay off money on other guys' contracts, like Scherzer and Verlander, they're just going to be like, hey, listen, do the same thing with Jeff McNeil, and we'll take him off your hands. Now, this is a vastly different situation because the money amounts between the two situations are vastly different, and this is chump change to the Mets, but the principle still remains. It still remains. So I don't know, man. I don't know what to make of it. But honestly, just like I said, you can't mess up the flow with bringing up Brett Beatty and having him to go back to platooning with Mark Vientos. By the way, is Brett Beatty joining the Mets officially in London or not?
Yeah, there's a pretty good chance because you can put a position player as a 27th man, not an extra pitcher. So he'll
Yeah.
probably be at least in one of the games. I'm not sure if he's going to be in the first game because of the lefty, but he will be he will be the 27th man in one of the games because you're allowed to
And so
carry 27 in this series.
that's what I was kind of wondering. So like exactly what I said about that situation about not bringing up Brett Beatty to mess up the flow of like Mark Vientos with how well he's doing both defensively and offensively. You can't mess up that flow at second base, even though it's a short sample size. You have to roll more or less positionally with a hot hand, in my opinion. Like you can't mess up that flow. Now, listen, Brett Beatty comes up. We don't know what Starling Marte's situation is. Obviously, he, got scratched there late with a sore knee. We don't know if that's lingering or what. He's not making an IL appearance. He's not going on the IL as far as I know. So he'll be available. But maybe the Mets try out Brett Beatty in the outfield if worse comes to worse and they need to put him in the game. I don't know how that works out. Maybe, maybe not. That's not my concern. Ride the hot hand positionally, and my take on riding the hot hand in the bullpen is a little bit different, but we'll get to the bullpen here and also the pitching in general. But nonetheless, it's undeniable, Rob. It's really undeniable.
Yeah, and going back to the Jeff McNeil situation about contract and look, the Mets DFA'd Omar Narvaez who was making $10 million. So I think look, there will be a team that wants Jeff McNeil because every team, every GM, some nerd in the analytics department is going to say that they can fix Jeff McNeil, right? That's all you need is one team that thinks they can fix him. And not saying that you're going to get a top prospect for Jeff McNeil. I'm not that naive. But if you pay the contract, you might get maybe a lower level minor leaguer, maybe that has a pretty elite arm that's probably not on the top 20 in a team's prospect list. But he might be an arm that might help you in a year or even later in this year, in the bullpen or something like that, or a bullpen arm that nobody's really talking about. Brian Cashman does it all the time with the Yankees. He trades guys, gets guys that you never heard of, and they become good bullpen arms. With the pitching lab and David Stearns, who has been pretty good with trying to land arms in bullpen, you can do that. I don't think anybody would cry a river if Jeff McNeil gets traded for a player that we never heard of, prospect,
No.
or a late bullpen arm that nobody ever heard of either. So again, we're not there yet. I mean, maybe we are. I mean, Luis Ariz got traded 3 weeks ago. So 2 weeks ago. So, it is possible, I guess, if you get the right deal, I mean, you do it. Why not? I mean, he's not helping his team right now. They're playing better without him in the line, or at least the starting lineup. We'll see how that goes. But speaking of...
Wait, by the way, Rob, speaking of David Stearns, because we just talked about David Stearns, he doesn't make any moves, right? Oh, he doesn't make any moves. Listen, Narvaez is out of here, and he just got a valid replacement that is now going to compete with Tomas Nido, which is also a talking point when Francisco Alvarez comes back. Who's going to be the backup catcher, or if they roll with three catchers? Which I don't think they're going to roll three catchers since they're all righties at the plate. But it's certainly a question, right? But Luis Torrens, I know, like I said, very short sample size, but David Stearns, another example of pulling the plug and getting a serviceable guy
Yep.
via Narvaez and Cash to help this team out right now. I just want to give props where props are due, because a lot of people, that goes over their head. Like when we have these discussions about David Stearns, like everyone wants the big moves. And I understand that. We're Mets fans, it's a big market. You want the big moves because Steve Cohen is the richest owner in baseball, owns this team. But how about you just let David Stearns make this team better with players that you might have never heard of before or care about? Like, you don't always have to be right. We don't always have to be right. We just want to see winning. And if that's what the president of baseball operations is doing, then so be it. So another good move. Just had to see that.
Yeah, and you know what? To answer your question, if I'm Stearns, I like Torrens more than Nito. Like, look, Nito is
Me
what he
too.
is. Like Nito, good defensively, no bat at all for the most part. But what I see from Torrens is that he has that sneaky power that can, that can help the bottom of the lineup big time. And he is very much more serviceable than Nito. He throws more runners out. He's got a better arm. He's more quick behind the plate. And it seems like the pitchers, let's not leave that out, like to pitch to him. And that's a big deal, especially with a pitching staff, at least a rotation that has been struggling over the last couple of weeks. Like this rotation pitched well with Tim behind the plate. So we'll see how that goes. But it's more about the bat because I, Torrens or Nito, they're both good defensively, so they're not going to hurt you behind the plate. But I want a little bit more action in the lower part of the lineup because you see how when the lower part of the lineup gets on base and you got a hot Lindor, you got a hot Nimmo, you got a hot Alonso, those runners are coming home. And that wasn't happening earlier in the season. They would get on base. They would do their job at the bottom of the order. But guess what? All those top of the lineup guys were struggling and they weren't scoring those runs. Now they are. So I think Torrens can make this a little bit better of a bottom of the lineup, and it just makes it even more crucial for the bottom of the lineup because these guys at the top of the lineup are red hot right now, and you got to take advantage of it. You got to score those runners in scoring position, those runners on base that we missed out on a lot of games, specifically in May. And now I think because these guys are red hot, the bottom of the order needs to be more dynamic. And Torrens right now, he's hot. Like he got that sneaky power swing. And I mean he crushes balls when he connects on them. So I keep him, I like Nito, but I'd rather go with the hot hand. Nito, he seems like he's a team player type of guy. He doesn't have to go back to the minors if he doesn't approve of it, because I think he's past that. I don't think he has many options at all. So he actually has to. He can actually ask for his release if he wants to, but he seems like he wants to be in the Mets organization. Has no problem going back down just in case of an emergency. And when Alvarez comes back, imagine Alvarez in this lineup with Pete Alonso, JD, Nimmo, Lindor, all playing well. That's a lineup that people were talking about to start the season, right? We weren't expecting this lineup to be as bad as it been basically the entire season besides the last couple of weeks. So if this lineup does its job, you see how much easier it is to win a ball game because when you score the runs, it gives your pitchers breathing room. There's not a lot of pressure on them. They don't have to be perfect. And this series showed you exactly what runs scored and getting those insurance runs that we talked about on many shows, Chris. It helps the pitcher even when they give you scares throughout the game. But that insurance runs, those extra runs, gives you a little bit of breathing room that the Mets didn't give offensively early on in the season, up until, let's be honest, this series, really.
This
And
series,
that's the
yes.
important part. That is the important part right there, Chris.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just wanted to make a quick little note on that Nito versus Turen situation. Like Patty's saying in the chat, Nito's owed just over $2 million with the Mets this season. Listen, this is all like penny pinching, like from us as fans. This is nothing to the Mets in the grand scheme of things, but this is something worth note. And when you're comparing the two, because like you said, if the Mets do choose Nito and they choose, or they choose Terens over Nito, believe Nito will be able to opt out and seek a deal somewhere else. If I have that correctly. And Terens is only due just over 500K. So he's not even making a full mill this season. And by the way, Terens is also 2 years younger than Mr. Tomas Nido. I believe he would be an unrestricted free agent as well at the end of the season. So the Mets would have to re-sign him if they want him to be the backup catcher behind Alvarez for next year. But like you said, we already know what Nido is. And don't get me wrong, when Nido was called up, right, he has done decent. He's done a decent job. He also had a hit in this national series in that second game where every single Met had a hit. But we know what Nito is. We know what his ceiling is defensively, and particularly, like you said, offensively. We don't know what Terenz's ceiling offensively is yet. And from what we've seen in the first couple of games, like I said, I don't want to jump to any conclusions, but that power that he possesses is light years beyond what Nito can produce. Light years beyond. So I agree with you. I'd rather just take the chance with Terens, especially showing his capability of not only commanding a pitching staff, but also just throwing runners out. You might not lose any value defensively. There might not be any defensive drop off. So why not take the risk with maybe a larger gap in the offensive production? I don't know. That's just my line of thinking. Everybody can think about it. I know this fan base loves Nito. He's been Mr. Reliable. They've been dependent on him a little bit too much, in my opinion, over the last couple of years. But that's just my little note on that situation.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, at this current time where the Mets are 8 games under 500 and trying to get back into this, jumping over a few more teams over this wild card, even though they're 3.5 games out of a wild card spot and 4 in the second wild card spot. And yeah, I mean, I think I'm not worried because I think Davidson's going to make the right call. Like, he's been working. He's always working. He's always changing the roster. You're not doing your job, even though Nito's been doing his job. So it's not really a demotion based on performance because we know what Nito is. It's just that Terens brings a little bit more offense to the bottom of the order. And right now, why not take advantage of a lineup that is scary right now? Like, they're scoring. Like, if you average out the series, they're scoring around 6 runs per game, 6.5 runs per game. That's hard to beat. I don't care who you're playing against. Even you score 6.5 runs against the Phillies, guess what? You probably have a pretty good chance to win. So I would do all you can, especially in the series with the Phillies that have pitched well. Their offense is really good. But this is a London series. Speaking of the series that's coming up, we don't know. It's a 2-game series, 1 home, 1 away, technically. It's a smaller ballpark. It plays differently. The ball travels out there tremendously in a small ballpark. So, it's very hard to judge this series or 2-game set in London because if the Mets take both games against the Phillies, obviously Met fans are going to go a little nuts. They've won 5 in a row. Who knows? By then we might gain a couple more games in a wild card, and then we're really talking about something here. But if we lose 2 against the Phillies or even split, I think it's more about the circumstance of the London series, and it's a lot. It's an event. That's what it feels. It feels like an exhibition, to be honest with you. It doesn't feel like a regular season game. I don't like these games abroad, to be honest with you, because it feels more of an event, of an exhibition to obviously promote the game. But let's be honest, nobody cares if real baseball fans didn't go to the baseball games in London. You wouldn't get a full pack, 70, 80,000 stadium fans in the seats because there's a lot of Phillies and Met fans. I know a lot of them that travel there, to go there. So it's an event. It's something that Major League Baseball likes to do for some apparent reason in the European countries. I don't get it, but it is what it is. But I just want to see the Mets play well, and it's going to be hard to judge, Chris, this series because, there's a lot going on. They're bringing their families. They already talked about they're going to be going to dinner, I think tonight or tomorrow night, with their families and the whole team and stuff like that. So and they're really looking forward to that. So it's more of like, oh, let's enjoy the London and Europe and everything like that. And I'm assuming the Phillies are going to be the same way, especially they're 7 games ahead in their division right now, so they feel real comfortable. Maybe that's good for the Mets, maybe not. But what do you take about this London series after the sweep of the Nationals? Like, do you got a feel of it? Does it feel like an exhibition to you? I know it's important games for us, obviously, because we got to get back into this thing. But how are you feeling about this London series? Are you excited? Are you? It's a weird feeling to me. I don't know about you.
I'm gonna take the opposite stance. This is counts in your win-loss category of
Okay.
162, and the players have to treat it just the same as well. So I get that MLB is trying to spread the game, obviously. I think it's a good thing, but there is something to be said for the jet lag, etc., having an impact. Just like you said, the overall touristy part of it, of guys going out, which is not bad at all. That's exactly what you expect. These guys are humans at the end of the day. They're going to be going out for a team bonding dinner today. They've already been hitting the pubs. Like, I've already seen pictures of them in pubs and drinking beer and like have a good time. But when it comes down to the game, us as fans, like, this counts towards the 162. You can gain games in the standings category with these games. So there's no excuses for lack of performance, whether I'm not going to say this, but whether beer's in your system or not, like from the night before, it doesn't really matter. You know what I mean? Like, you got to go out there and perform. And I'm not giving this team any excuses because, one, let's be
Yeah.
honest with you, they don't deserve any excuses. They put themselves in a situation where they just have no room to play with anymore. This is a crucial situation. These are crucial games, and these games matter. Every game matters, probably most likely to the Mets more so than the opponent that we have in the stretches coming up. Like, we have the Phillies, the Marlins, and the Padres. This is good time to gain some games in that uh games back category in the wild card. And I don't know. I don't have really any. I'm indifferent on where the game is played. I don't care where they play it. They could play in Australia, and this is still a win-loss. This is part of the regular season. If the MLB wants to go to Australia and spread baseball there and have the Mets be a part of that Australian baseball classic, guess what? I'm going to still watch it. You probably will still watch it. And this team is going to have to go and fly over there and perform. So this is nothing really different to me. I understand your point, but I'm not making that excuse for them. We got 2 matchups, 2 games. They're going to be jet lagged. They still got to go out there and perform. So I believe the pitching matchups are Ranger Suarez versus Sean Manaea in game 1. And then game 2 is Taijuan Walker versus Jose Quintana. So the main point here is, and what I'm looking for in this series from the Mets, and this was what really irked me in game 1, is the bullpen. Who do you call on? Because I listen, if the offense continues this and the starting pitching continues this, we saw great pitching in general from the starting pitchers, right? Maybe minus a little bit of a McNeil stinker, or not a McNeil, a McGill stinker in game 1, but the offense got his back. But
Yeah.
you turn it over to the bullpen. How do they navigate this? And I was so disappointed because during my series preview live stream, I made this a point that I was really going to go out there and watch if the Mets put themselves in a situation in the 9th inning to close out a ball game and close out a win in game 1 in DC, which guy were they going to call on in the bullpen to give them that save after we've seen Adam Ottavino blow it, after we saw Jake Diekman blow it, and after we saw Edwin Diaz a number of times blow it. And guess who they called on? The guy that I didn't want them to call on because he stunk this year. And that's Mr. Adam Ottavino.
Yeah.
Man, I could go the whole rest of the season without seeing Adam Ottavino in a high leverage situation spot, and I'll be good. I'll
Yeah.
be good. And
The
guess what
ninth
he
inning
did?
happened.
1/3 innings pitched, 2 runs, 2 walks, and he had to get Jake Diekman, the guy who blew the save even after him. Most recently, the guy who blew the save, Jake Diekman, he had to go out there and save Adam Ottavino's ass. You can't do that. I'm sorry. You cannot do that. If you're going to be doing that, Mr. Adam Ottavino, I don't care what your savant page says. I don't care how much run you have on your slider or your fastball. I don't care. You cannot be doing that to a team that needs to lock these ball games down and that hasn't been putting the team consistently in positions to win games but now did so, and you're gonna still go out there and try to blow the. I can't stand it, Rob. I don't know. You know my opinions, and everybody in this chat, whether they're a part of your channel, my channel, or both, everybody should know my opinions on Adam Ottavino. I never wanted him to be back and a part of this organization. I didn't talk about Adam Ottavino until the Mets actually signed him because I was just like, he's off the table. I hope bygones are bygones, and I just really just want him out of here. Respect, with all due respect, and with respect to Adam Ottavino, very happy that he wanted to be back part of this New York organization, this Mets organization. It was awesome, but like, it's approaching 40 years old. He's a ton of walk issues, or did at least, and guys just seem to have been figuring him out.
Yeah.
So he can't even sniff the ninth inning anymore, especially in this London series against this Phillies lineup. I got to get him out of here. Give me Reed Garrett. I want some consistency in the back end of that bullpen. I know Reed Garrett's been on a slide. I know Daniel Nunez is on the come up because he's been looking really impressive. Danny Young's another guy that's been impressive, but I need some consistency. And I really think if you take Reed Garrett away from those seventh or eighth inning sort of appearances and you give him a consistent role as closer when Edwin Diaz is out, I think he could benefit from that. So that's my take on it.
Yeah, I like Reed Garrett in that spot, but you know what though? With Young and Nunez pitching extremely well, why not give those two guys opportunities in the eighth and the ninth? Nunez seems like he got that attitude and that stuff to be a ninth closer type of pitcher. Why don't you try it? Like, nothing's really working. And you brought this up in your stream. Like, you were just like, why don't you let Young? Why don't you let Nunez? I forgot what stream it was, but it was when the Mets either blew that game or they just almost blew it. Nobody's doing the job. So you're bringing these kids up. Give them an opportunity. What if Nunez, you get lightning in a bottle here and it works, right? I'm not saying when Diaz comes back to, put Diaz in the eighth inning, but you know what? Maybe he might be a setup man now. Like, we have to start thinking about that only because you have to, because there's no options. Like, and I know Easy's killing me about Ottavino, and I never said Ottavino. I said Ottavino is good, but you have to understand, I'm not talking about the eighth or ninth inning. He does not deserve. I never want. He's terrible as a closer. I never said him as a closer, but he is a 6-7 inning guy. That's where he is, and he thrives in that spot better. In high leverage, big situations, late in games, absolutely not. But the Mets brought Ottavino back to be a 6th inning, 7th inning guy, 7th inning occasionally, but mostly 6th inning, but probably 6th or 7th. They never portrayed him as an 8th or 8th inning guy. Definitely not a guy who is going to be, the next man up in a closer situation if Diaz goes down. Like, that wasn't the role for him. So I never expected Ottavino to be good in that role because he never has. He wasn't with the Yankees. He wasn't with the Mets. He wasn't with anybody else he was at. So I don't expect him to be good now at almost 40. I know where he can perform well, but because this bullpen has been struggling and the injuries and the DFAs, we need him to be pushed up into a bigger role. Problem is, he's not good in those 8th or 9th inning, right? You can't put him in those roles. Unfortunately, you can't. But we're not paying him to be a setup man or a closer. We're just not. He needs to step up as the veteran he is and do his job when called upon. But it's hard to, just like Reed Garrett. Like, we want Reed Garrett probably to be the closer right now. But what if Reed Garrett goes back to Reed Garrett of his entire career? Well, you got to go with somebody else, right? Then you could say, well, Reed Garrett's not a closer. Reed Garrett was mostly a 5th in. He came in the 5th inning when his starter struggling, or maybe the 6th. You would never see him in late inning roles in any part of his career. So it's the same thing with Drew Smith, right? How many Met fans wanted Drew Smith off this team? Drew Smith is going to be a big part of this bullpen right now, and he might get 8th inning, maybe closer role every now and then as well, matchup wise, since he's healthy now. So Drew Smith, who the Mets organization really, really loves, he's another one that might get an opportunity as well. And you got to do it. But Ottavino needs to stay out of the 8th or the 9th. Like, that's a guarantee. I never wanted him in that spot. I didn't think the Mets signed him to be in that spot. And it was obvious. Look at the beginning of the year. He pitched a lot of 6th and seventh inning, right? When Diaz was struggling and blowing games, that's when and other guys were struggling. Look where Ottavino went. You know why? Because nobody was trusted in that bullpen. You can always try to rely on your good old veteran to get the job done. And that's what Mendoza did, right? He relied on his veteran pitchers, the guys that he believes he can trust. You trust a veteran over a guy that you don't trust. It's just that simple, right? I don't want
Yeah.
Ottavino in the eighth of the ninth. It's just that simple. But
I think
you have
the
to try.
answer I think the answer right now, if I had to just like sort of propose a solution to this and try to set something up, like I said, I want consistency, Rob. I don't want to see a closer by committee role. I don't want to
Mhm.
see a setup by committee role. I want to see some consistency because I think guys also just need to get used to being in one spot. And like I said, play the hot hand in the field, right? Keep those guys, don't do the platoon, and don't switch around guys in the bullpen. Um Adam Ottavino and Danny Young. I want to give Danny Young more of a role, but it's kind of hard for me to prioritize him over some other guys when I kind of look at like the stuff aspect of it. Danny Young and Adam Ottavino for the sixth, if the pitchers can't get through 5 innings or 6 innings. I think Drew Smith, this is my hot take, is Drew Smith should be in that seventh inning role.
I
And
agree.
then Daniel Nunez, give him that setup role. I think he's capable, short sample size, right? I think Darren's bringing up the strikeouts that he has and however many innings pitched he has for the Mets so far. I think he could be a good setup guy. And then Reed Garrett, just make him the closer. And have Reed Garrett on a short leash, but at least give him the opportunity to be that solidified closer in back-to-back ball games to see how he fares. And then when Edwin Diaz comes back, you got to make a decision on one of those guys and who you want to change around, right? Do you trust Edwin Diaz enough? By the way, Edwin Diaz with that shoulder impingement, believe he threw a bullpen session over 20 pitches, and he's scheduled to make a rehab appearance in Brooklyn with Brooklyn, I believe. So keep an eye out on that. But yeah, we're not going to see him in the London series, obviously, and this bullpen's going to have to just make do with what it has, until he's back, until they get more help. And it's an interesting point here to bring up as well in terms of bringing guys like Tidwell or Brandon Sproat, who've been just absolutely killing it, up maybe to do like a bullpen stint and see what they got in the bullpen. I would shy away from that. Like, it's too early to sort of foresee that happening and talk about that. But I would shy away from that if I had to give you just like an upfront answer. But I don't think it's off the table for this front office. I think that if you need to see and evaluate this young talent, right? And let's say they do keep Severino around, right? Let's say maybe Quintana's gone. This is like where I'm trying to get at with the hybrid sell off because, like, Quintana, right? Regardless if the Mets are in it or not, they can get rid of Quintana because he's not really producing and providing that consistency that we all had hoped for. So he's a like lost cost anyway. So a sunken cost, I should say. So he's probably gone. Maybe if you want to retain Severino, like a hybrid sell-off, right? So you can sort of open up these roster spots. But meanwhile, in Syracuse, I appreciate you bringing that up. I would probably shy away from that personally, but I will say it could be a good option if this team gets to a point where they're still competing, but they also feel like they need to give some of these younger guys in the minors looks before the 2025 season.
Yeah, that's a good thing. That makes a lot. That makes actually a lot of sense. And again, um, I like the roles that like I like to set guys in roles, and I think the the pitchers like knowing where they're going to pitch, or at least most of the time know where they're going to pitch. I think they like knowing what role they're going to be in because it makes them prepare better, right? I think the biggest problem with a lot of these bullpen arms in all of baseball, if you look around the league, right? If you don't have set roles for a lot of your guys and you put them in just matchup situations, they don't seem like they do as well unless they have a set role. And I think that's exactly what I think Mendoza's going to try to do. Right? It's hard with a lot of moving parts that either are not performing, that are hurt, and people that are DFA'd. Right? You got a lot of guys coming up from the minors. You got a lot of guys coming back from injury. Drew Smith just came back. So there's a lot of moving parts, and it's hard for a manager to set roles when who do you put where? Like you can have it set in stone. All right, I know Drew Smith's going to be the 7th, Nunez the 8th, Garrett the 9th. Well, what if that blows up in our face? Right? Then what do you do? Like And that's been constant with whatever name you want to put in the seventh, eighth, or ninth. When it was Ottavino in the ninth and Lopez in the eighth, and God knows whom in the seventh, it wasn't working. So that's where you just have to hopefully get at least three, maybe you need four guys that you can trust in your bullpen. Not saying they're going to be perfect every time out, but guys you can go to almost every single day and put out there in a set role. Because if you got four guys you can trust, you can mess around with the others in your bullpen. So that's where Mendoza's probably working that fine line right now when it comes to the bullpen. But to finish it up and to get things started, we're going to see if we're going to do a roundtable. We'll see how that goes. Maybe we'll do it after the London series. I know a lot of people emailed me on my channel email asking if we're going to do a roundtable on Friday. I don't know, guys. There's a lot of moving parts. A lot of people with scheduling. 4 people trying to get a schedule together is not easy. But we'll talk about it in the group chat. But Chris, your final thoughts, what you want to see in this London series, and what do I wouldn't say expect, but what do you want to see from this Mets team besides W's and your expectation going into the series?
I'll take an even split at this point. I think we have to give credit to the Phillies for playing just like some unreal baseball right now. I think they're a good team. We'll see if it sort of keeps up, and we'll see what happens as we approach the playoffs with them. But they're a good team. So I think that the Mets definitely have what it takes to beat the Phillies, right? The last go around, they definitely were in some ball games with the Phillies. But they got to play a complete 9 innings, Rob. That's what I want to see first and foremost. I want to see them play a complete ball game because guess what? They played a solid 8 innings in that first game, and they tried to give everyone, every Mets fan, which there was a lot of in DC, a heart attack, especially Adam Ottavino in that last game. So play a complete ball game because listen, you go out there and play a better team. This is the Nationals we're talking about. I'm not going to discredit the wins, but I'm also just going to keep it objective and be like, this is the Nationals. You play the Phillies, you play any other good team, the Braves, the Dodgers. You do what you did in game 1 of this series, you might not escape with the win. One swing of the bat changes the ball game completely, and we've already seen that this year, so I don't have to go on a rant about it. Play a complete ball game. And I think above all else, I really am curious to see how this bullpen performs because what's turned into a strong suit of this team that was carrying this team early on has now transferred into a little bit more of a weaker aspect of this team by, listen, some of it's just poor performance and some of it is just injuries, man. You can't escape them. Brooks Raley, Edwin Diaz, and then the whole Jorge Lopez situation. By virtue of what's happened and played out, you can't foresee that. You can't plan that. Like that's something where you go into the season, you can't expect that. So we'll see. I think the guys still have what it takes. I think that the bullpen is serviceable still. The names and the arms and what they have to offer is serviceable in order to just stay afloat. So I'm really curious as to how Mendoza and this organization approaches this bullpen moving forward before Edwin Diaz gets back. And that's starting with the London series. So listen, bottom line is keep playing clean baseball. That's all I'm expecting. Nothing less. Clean, complete baseball. And I want to get back on this stream on like a series recap right here with you and have a generally positive conversation because it's been negative, 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 negative. And trust me, when it's time to be negative with this team, we won't be afraid to call out poor performances because we spent the last couple of weeks doing so. But this stream was finally a breath of fresh air to come on here and just talk about positives. For example, like Marte is a positive, Vientos, more than a positive, 1,000 OPS, 339. OBP of 400, Mark Vientos is killing it. This is exactly what we want to be talking about. A Brandon Nimmo that seems to be heating up. Let's see if he keeps it up. A Francisco Lindor that's comfortable. I'm just rehashing everything I said at the top of the stream, but this is good. I want to come back here after this London Classic because we're going to have an off day as well after that Sunday game. And I want to talk about this team in a positive manner, something that we can build off of. That's it. Nothing more, nothing less. Hit that subscribe button on both of our channels, being streamed to my channel and Rob's channel, CPNY Sports. Find me on X, Instagram, all that good stuff. If you're a Rangers fan, somehow, some way, we're still trying to recover from that season. Going to be doing a season recap on the channel next week as well. And we'll go about it from here. We'll be here all summer long talking about this team, win or lose, as we approach the deadline. So appreciate y'all being here.
Yeah, absolutely. And make sure you subscribe to Chris's channel. And yeah, I mean, you know what's a positive stream, and the Mets are playing good baseball right now when I didn't bring up Pete Alonso at all. Like, it's perfect situation. Like, but you know what? Guess what? You get
Please don't say it.
You talk about Pete Alonso when Hector goes live tonight at 7:30. Like, talk about, he loves that stuff. But with that said, guys, London series coming up next. Listen, I'd be happy with a split. I think these games are very hard to sweep, right? There's going to be a lot of runs scored because London series, I think it's been 2 over the last couple of seasons. There's been a lot of runs scored. It's a small ballpark. The ball flies out of that stadium, so you're going to see a lot of offense. So don't get discouraged if guys you expect to do well pitching wise are giving up runs. That stadium, the way it's going to be in the high 50s, low 60s there. There's a lot of wind over there, so, and a small ballpark. So expect runs. Don't get discouraged when the Mets give up some runs, because the Phillies will as well, because it's just a ballpark and a stadium that does. So give me a split. I'll be ecstatic about a sweep. Don't get swept. All right, you got the UK Mets fan there that a lot of us follow on X. You got the 7 line there. You got a lot of Met fans that are not going with either of those groups that are going to be there. Obviously, it's going to be a split crowd, but we know the New York fans are going to show up big time. As always, the Met fans are going to show out just like they did in DC. They will show up in London. All over my social media, they're all over London right now, all over Europe right now, to be honest. So split at least. Sweep would be great. Don't come back losing 2 of those games, because all that good mojo and all that Pete Alonso talk will start again. So with that said, everybody have a great night. Let's go Mets. We'll see what shows we are going to be tomorrow. Maybe a Mets Talk Live, maybe a roundtable. We shall see. So Chris, have a great day. Everybody in the chat, have a great day. Let's go Mets. Enjoy the off days, guys. We didn't lose. See you in the London series. Let's go Mets. Good night, guys.
Let's go Mets.
You'll find a Mets fan, let's go. This is a Mets cheer for all your Mets cheerleaders.